Our topics of security today is the firewall and antivirus enough, access control and what it means for an enterprise, and security and policy creation. So we talk about security today. What are the different technologies and emerging technologies today that are at the forefront of most managers today? The concepts that we have outlined at one point were just abstracts, but now are just seen as top of mind, front of concept, cloud computing and virtualization as far as adoption rates and utilization. Application and awareness and mobility are something that are in today's day and age somewhat of an abstract, and people are having a hard time wrapping their arms around it simply because they were things that were not critically thought of as something useful in the workplace, other than the BlackBerry, which for a while was the king of the castle as it relates to mobility in the workplace. And mobility in the workplace, furthermore, wrapped its arms around the concept of wireless access points and controllers and such. But that is changing now, and we'll discuss a little bit further on how that is further changing the enterprise and security as a whole. As the New York Times magazine recently wrote, we have an inimical curiosity when it comes to the infrastructure. It tends to feature in our thoughts only when it's not working. The Google search results that are returned in 0.15 seconds were once a stirring novelty, but soon became just another assumption in our lives, like the air we breathe, yet whose day would proceed smoothly without the computing infrastructure that increasingly makes it possible to navigate the world and our relationships with it. If you stop to think about it, how many of us would actually come to a halt if our servers came crashing down, or if we were unable to do Facebook or LinkedIn or anything of that nature? Truly, it's something that we become accustomed to, and as a society have further grasped onto as a part of our daily lives. Those of us that tweet or do LinkedIn or Facebook, or furthermore use Salesforce.com, can clearly understand where these where this is going and how much it impacts us on a daily basis. Now, to further that reality, we look at the applications that are further being developed for smartphones and smart tablets in the enterprise. More and more application developers are actually producing applications to make these devices much more useful in the enterprise. But what does that mean from a security aspect? It further enhances and it further creates another platform for which hackers and malicious malware writers to develop stuff for. And then we look at the reality. What is the adoption rates? Are they truly going up, or is it something that is just pie in the sky? Are we truly understanding the cost of doing nothing? What applications today are just basically easy targets? Personal consumer devices on the LAN are growing at an alarming rate, and to the chagrin of many IT administrators, unbeknownst to them. They know it's there, they know it's coming, but how do you get in front of that freight train to help kind of stave off the mess that is soon to unfold? So again, we talk about the concepts of cloud computing. So we look at cloud computing and virtualization. They're kind of tied at the hip, hand in hand. So you have cloud computing, this concept of being able to share anything from anywhere. And the reality is it is highly adopted. You take a look at AT&T advertising its cloud services, or you take a look at Google, the largest provider, one of the largest providers of cloud computing email, or Amazon.com, who recently just launched their music service, where you can purchase music and then be part of their cloud service to hold that music. These are things that are becoming at the forefront, and they are becoming consumer-driven as well. So once that paradigm hits, there really is no slowing down that freight train, because it's becoming something that's ingrained in our daily lives, much in the way that the VCR or the DVR has become to us, much in the way that email has become part of our lives, or our smartphones. 10 years ago, the smartphone was just a novelty. Now it is a actual part of our daily lives. How many of you can actually survive without it? I beg to ask the question, how many of you can actually live without seeing your email for a day? Now we look at virtualization. Virtualization is the platform on which most cloud infrastructures are delivered. Reason being, it's fast, it's quick, it's easily provisioned. It scales very quickly, but the caveats to that are the IOs, the footprint of which is required in some cases to do a forklift upgrade of all your pancake or pizza box servers and insert these large data center high-density racks full of high-density servers. However, that also presents itself with a unique security proposition as to who's minding the store. While you may be able to watch the physicality of the security on those servers, are you able to look truly within the server? And then you have the applications that are being developed on top of that. In order to provide delivery and content delivery and applications to satisfy user demand, what are the caveats and the ramifications of these applications? Furthermore, many more applications are being developed in the wild for your consumer base, which brings us to the mobility aspect of it all, your iPhones, your Android-based devices, Symbian devices, and so forth, and whatever may be coming our way in the future. These are all things that are kind of in the background, simmering, stewing, but at one point are going to come to a boiling point. So as we look at this graphic here, we can see that 18% over 2009. Application virtualization sort of spun up and grew up a little bit more over 2009. That's an 18% jump. The survey was taken by CIO Insight and surveyed many of the CIOs in its reading base. And they asked the question to where your company currently stands with regard to each of the following emerging technologies. So as you can see, storage virtualization, application virtualization, virtual appliances, these are all things that are at the forefront of their collective thoughts. But if you look down also, down below, platform as a service, being able to deliver these content and content delivery mechanisms and use it as a service, 16% more over last year, over 2009. These types of growth patterns indicate that not only are CIOs thinking about it, but they're going to start to adopt it at a much more granular and much more greater rate. So again, we touch on the adoption. So we kind of figured that the adoption rate might grow. And what does that mean? So if more CIOs are thinking about adopting these new concepts, such as cloud computing and virtualization, where does that put the IT administrator or the security administrator? Do they really understand the cost of doing nothing, rather keeping your environment static? These are the questions that sometimes get asked or sometimes are missed because it's not truly understood what the impact is going to be on the environment. Simply put, I have a firewall. I might have antivirus. Does that truly? I feel totally secure, but is that truly the case based on the new applications and technologies that are being implemented in today's workforce? The applications, are they truly easy targets? And again, personal consumer devices are jumping onto the land at an alarming rate. So we look at the reality of the adoption rates for these CIOs that have been polled. As you can see, 3/4 of them have actually answered to the positive, that they either are investigating, testing, or currently using. Now, while that doesn't always lead to the exact adoption rate, the final number, that does mean, though, that they are using them. And how many of us have been put in a position where you're told, we are going to test this, and that actually becomes production at some point or another? These are unplanned changes. These are unplanned tasks and projects for which we have unplanned security. We have unplanned environments for these. So you look at VDI, cloud security, private clouds and public clouds. Private clouds are one thing, but what about the public cloud? Who's watching that? 50% of the world's workloads will be virtualized by 2012, according to Gartner. Virtualization is the near de facto architecture for clouds, and this remains to be true because cloud computing requires a whole lot of resources. But what better way to provision these resources through virtualization? Security is a top concern for virtualization adoption. Now, that is the case for many of the security professionals. But for the CIO in terms, sometimes these things are not at the forefront. They're not the major concern because you understand your environment to be secure already. You understand your environment to have security mechanisms in place. So what more can be augmented to prevent that? And not understanding the way virtualization might work with security is a definite downfall, pitfall that may that lies with the adoption of virtualization. And then we take a look. 37% of large enterprises expect to adopt LASS or services as a service cloud in the next year, and that's by the Yankee Group. Again, platform as a service. It's delivering the content, delivering it as a service, sort of a service provider would deliver the phone service or any utility, being able to deliver this, such as Citrix, VMware, VDI, and so forth. Being able to provide this to your constituents, but how do you provide it at a secure, in a secure fashion? So the changing data center leads to a greater security challenge. Yesterday, we were dealing with physical boxes, physical footprint. They were easy to see. They were easy to understand. So you had dispersed physical separation, legacy client-server relationships, worms, viruses, trojans, denial of service. Those were the things we dealt with back, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. The reality today is we're moving towards consolidation, traffic patterns are changing, and threats are evolving. What can we expect for tomorrow? Virtualization, increased bandwidth utilization, traffic traveling at a much greater pace, much greater rate, movement of hosts through systems at the rate and alarming speed that they are traveling through. How can traditional systems keep up with this type of traffic? How can they inspect? How can they view? Who's minding the store? And then you have application-targeted attacks. No longer are we going after the platform. We're going after the application. There are many individuals out there that used to hack for notoriety. It has now become a financial ecosystem, and that you are no longer attacking for getting your name or getting recognized out there. It is now, I want to make some money. Who's willing to pay me? And a lot of these are organized crime institutions which target organizations simply because they have the means, they have the resources, and they have the talent pool to do so. So in today's security, you need to scale with new requirements, including cloud-based computing. You need to be able to look deep within the cloud. You need to be able to see what's going on in and around your systems and the traffic that's flowing in between them. You also have to have the access and access control so that you know who's accessing what and when. Dynamically provision new security services without new hardware. Can you truly provision these services with the existing hardware and platforms that you have? What can you do if your budget is constrained and you are implementing these other new technologies, but yet you don't have enough left for adding to your security platform? Make security decisions based on application usage instead of bandwidth utilization or separate locations. We are now looking at locking down the system based on the applications you use and how much you use it. You gain visibility into who is accessing specific applications. Again, the who, what, where, and why. This is important specifically towards those who are required to maintain such records for governance and compliancy issues. And you need to provide a secure remote access to all corporate users from any mobile device. Again, these are the things that are at the forefront of everybody who are emerging with these technologies, who are coming out with these technologies, and those who are implementing these technologies. While some of these concepts may be abstract, they are quickly becoming reality. And the reality is that we are moving towards a different type of infrastructure, different than what we have today. Tomorrow's workforce is going to be extremely mobile, extremely quick. Services need to be provisioned very quickly. Security needs to be flexible, but yet tangible and yet secure. Security today. Are firewalls enough? Is antivirus enough? The short answer is no. Firewalls are now the finger in the dam, just providing pointed security at a pointed solution. Antivirus and host checkers of today, they secure why they may secure the laptops and your desktops. They don't secure your mobile devices because they lack them. It's amazing that so many application writers or developers are actually writing all these applications, but yet no one is busy writing firewall security algorithms or host checking platforms for these mobile devices at large. Do the enterprise firewalls know what devices are accessing it? Can a firewall truly look and say, hey, I know who you are, I know why you're accessing me, and I know what content you're accessing it? And application awareness. Do you know what resources are being accessed and how? Again, we're kind of turning the blind eye there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And can you use what you have? Is your current infrastructure secure enough? Is your security platform strong enough to help mitigate the new technologies that are coming into the infrastructure and into the enterprise? Ask yourself the question, can you truly be safe, or can you truly secure your network in a virtual and a mobile environment? This is from Symantec. Symantec released this a little bit ago, and antivirus is not enough. Unfortunately, the bad guys have proven us correct here, Symantec says. Created 802,000 new malicious code signatures last year alone. That was a 71% increase over 2008, and the number representing more than half of all malicious code signatures ever created by Symantec. So furthermore, Symantec identified more than 240 million distinct new malicious programs, a 100% increase over 2008. So basically what they're saying is that year over year, the attack ratio is growing. And now the next graph that I'm going to pull up further illustrates that. And to their point, based on what we used to see in 2002 as 20,000 new signatures, now you got 2 million, close to 3 million in 2009. That number is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And the reason it's going to continue to grow is not specifically because we are not securing our platforms, but because there are new applications that are unsecure. So we take a look at Android as one of the most prevalent platforms out there for smartphones. We all read about in the newspaper how the latest round of viruses and Trojans that are going around are sitting on Android phones. Reason being is because Android doesn't vet the process or the application process. Now I'm assuming that's soon to change, but as that changes, so will the attackers. Their attack vector will change a little bit to morph and to become agile as Android developers do. Now, for iPhone or iOS, that hasn't exactly happened just yet, but it will become an issue further down the road as more applications are being written. iPhone does vet their process or the applications and does check everything that comes through the door, but at some point or another, it will become a vulnerability. Nothing is ever truly, totally 100% locked down. Somebody will find a way. So we kind of go back to the virtualization discussion. Physical network, virtual network. So Firewall IDSCs protects all traffic between the servers. So these servers are, again, traditional physical boxes that are being watched by a firewall, which are either inline or in sniff mode. Whether you have an IDP, you're sniffing on the line, you have a couple span ports, actually looking at your traffic, and you're able to make decisions based on what's going on there. The similar platform that you apply to a virtualized environment doesn't really work because, quite frankly, you're not looking at all of the traffic that's bouncing between the servers. You're looking at the traffic that's coming in and out of the hypervisor out into the physical security. So basically, someone can actually get in there, perform some malicious activity so that the traffic bounces between the boxes, and because it's all jumbled up, all that traffic that comes out is 1IO, through 1IO, the firewall is pretty much blind to the fact of what's going on inside. So before you know it, either you can have your data hacked, erased, or for even worse, having the data sniffed and completely taken away. Even data content protection might not do the trick in being able to protect that. Now, the purpose of the webinar is not to to inflict doom and gloom on what's happening today. It's simply a forum to discuss and to bring to the forefront what we are seeing today as far as security and why we see these as critical elements within the environment and why they need to be addressed as quickly as possible. So the mobile internet is the new internet. Again, I kind of touched on this a little bit a while ago. The proliferation of devices and the number of smartphone sales will exceed PC sales by 2012. This source is Morgan Stanley, and they did research on this based on the number of devices that are currently being sold, and those of the PC and laptops. Now, again, the smartphone was once viewed as a novelty, a nice to have. It wasn't a this is the end all be all for corporate environments. We are not going to allow this onto our network. I can remember working back in Libertyville about 12 years ago, and we had one of these small devices. Actually, it was this the small little laptop in the middle here to the left. And we started testing with this device. It was a small Linux box, and we were using it for our sales force. Now, back then, everybody viewed this device as a novelty. They thought it was a joke. They were like, "This possibly can't work." Well, a few years later, the introduction of the first tablet PC came out. It was a laptop. You know, you all remember it was a full-blown laptop that could flip inside out, and basically you can write on it with a smart pen and then use it. Little bit hokey, a little bit clunky, but yet it was still nonetheless a PC, and it could be secured. But again, the adoption for that was not very good because people thought it was a novelty. Flash forward to today, and what we have now are iPads, Kindles, Blackberries, iPhones, all significantly ingrained in the business at hand and the tasks we perform each and every day. You couple that with our connected socialization and our behavior has kind of changed. No longer are we looking at the device as an enterprise-only device, but as also our way to stay connected. So it is our consumer device. That further creates more issues because now we are introducing the mixture of data streams that are both public and corporate. And then we take a look at our content consumption. We as a society are an instant gratification society. We look to feed on what gratifies us immediately, and if it's a movie that we want to see right now, you just log on to your iPhone or to your iPad or to any other mobile device. You click on Netflix and voila, you have a movie. Furthermore, we have information on the go. News, radio, stock reports, all of those which are ingrained and are used on a daily basis by millions of people across the world, not just here in the U.S. And all of that coupled together poses a stringent problem because not only are we dependent on these applications to get by on a daily basis or to stay communicated, we also depend on them to keep our businesses running. And from a security aspect, no one is really taking a good hard look at the security aspect other than a few vendors. And there are those that are out there leading the charge and being able to secure that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the implications are significant as it relates to mobile virtualization and cloud computing. So we kind of touched the chagrin of many IT administrators. Their angst will become the mobile device without permission that are connected to the network. Surveyed, 81% had access without permission and 58% are accessing daily without permission. 40% use the same smartphone for both business and personal. That number is only going to increase as they become much more commonplace. Across that network that is no longer self-contained, so we are greatly dispersed. We are now global. We have places everywhere. We have services everywhere. We are sharing content. So we have the enterprise going to a service provider, which in turn is providing cloud services, and now we have mobile devices introduced into the factor. So for enterprises, we look at personal devices sneaking onto the network. New threat vectors. It's a strain on IT support. Can you help me with my BlackBerry? Can you help me with my iPhone? In particular with iPhones. BlackBerry was the common de facto for enterprise users because of the BES server. iPhone didn't have a way or means to secure itself. But as more and more executives started leaning towards the iPhone, it started becoming something that IT administrators had to support. Not that they wanted to support it, but they had to support it. For service providers, multiple points of vulnerability. There are multiple access points. So with so many phones and so many different points of entry, how do you guard that? Are you currently looking at that? These are things that you must consider when you discuss these types of services. Currently, only fragmented security solutions. Again, point vendors just selling point products to guard a certain position or segment of the environment. And what is the capital expense versus the operating expense impact? To obtain the technology, it does cost a great deal of money, but going forward, how are you able to maintain it at a cost? And furthermore, when you add the cost of security on top of that, on top of your legacy platform, how do you help mitigate all of that going forward? And for consumers, sensitive personal info is exposed. Theft, loss, and malware threats. Again, these are some really motivated individuals that are trying to get at your data. Credit card fraud, credit card numbering, being able to go ahead and basically pickpocket them, you in virtual cyberspace. That's what they basically are, virtual pickpockets, and they're going after your information. And what they do with it afterwards, well, you can only imagine what they're going to try to accomplish. The goal is to try to mitigate that and help reduce the risk, because nothing is ever 100% secure. The moment you believe you're 100% secure, that's when you become vulnerable. And children need protection. Furthermore, these devices are being used at home. What are they looking at? We introduced this concept here not only because it's a moral issue, but also because it's a real issue. You take your stuff home. I've seen laptops enter the VPN cloud and come into the network and snake its way through because individuals allow their children or family members to go ahead and use their laptops or mobile devices. And in many cases, they don't know what they're looking at, specifically when they're going through the web, or maybe they do, or maybe they're told, check this out. How do you stop that? How do you prevent that? These are things that are difficult to do. So we look at the research. New research reveals that there is a gap between behavior and a desire to be safe. Again, it's help me please now, but you know what? Give me 10 minutes. In many forms, it's our will and our desire to go ahead and try to say that we want to be secure, but in reality, we don't want what we have. We don't want what we have to be taken away. So again, 40% of them use their smartphone for both personal and business. 52% of the respondents also with children rank parental controls extremely or very important. 72% of them share or access sensitive info such as banking, credit cards, social security, and medical records. And 81% of the respondents access their employer's network without permission. 58% do it every day. That's more, obviously that's more than half. So how do you help stave that? So that brings us to access control. What does it mean for an enterprise? So this is the who, what, where, and why. And these are the answers to who, what, where, and why. The methods in which you apply access control can be different and varying. They can be stringent or overly stringent, and we'll talk about that furthermore down the road as it relates to security policy and developing a security policy. But however, access control, whether it be at NAC or UAC or just plain old AC, what is it really? They're the means and mechanisms by which you can help guard and maintain a linear rate of control. And what do I mean by that? It means that you put in place, or you have in place, policies, procedures, specifically tied down to policies and procedures on hardware platform, specifically even more tied down to the way you allow people to access your network. These are things that are communicating from the top down to be able to proliferate through the entire organization, meaning this is the way we access our network. This is how we're going to secure our network. You need to comply with these or you're not going to get in. How can it help your enterprise? Well, first of all, it will help eliminate the gaps between who has access and who doesn't have access to what. So many IT administrators are forced to give access to XYZ personnel, and then at the end of the day, that gets forgotten because it's for a certain project. That access continues on, and then more access is given and granted to others. And before you know it, you have a fully meshed access platform where everybody has access to everything, and no one knows who has access to what. Typically, this is a nightmare for those that are reliant on compliance and governance, and those who have to produce reports on who had access. When you give them that report and everybody in the organization or the organizational unit has access to sensitive material such as HR or financial records, that can be a high fine or levy against the organization. Is the cost worth it? Again, I ask you the question, can you afford not to secure your environment? Can you afford not to provide access control? Are those fines or are those dings against your organization worth not having that type of control within your organization? So this is just a very quick slide, very intuitive sample of what access control could look like or mean for an organization. Basically, just looking at the way the architecture might be, again, this is high level, you would have a group of servers, LDAP, radius, going to a proxy or an enforcer, basically a box, be it a switch or a firewall, that dictates, hey, this guy has access, this guy does not have access. It holds the policy. Gets carried on to the access layer switch and then provides it to the access requester. So be it a device with a web browser, or a device with an 802.1x supplicant, or a device with Kerberos such as Windows, or a device with the Novell client. These are all different ways to secure and provide access control. These are all ways that you can start beginning to look into tying down your network and providing a secure means and methods for accessing the content behind the ivory tower. Specifically, when you have financial records, when you have credit card information, or when you have medical records, these are things that need to be understood and need to be discussed at a very high level with upper management. So it is clearly conveyed that these are the things that can happen, and here are the costs associated. Furthermore, can you do it with the infrastructure that you have today? In most cases, there are ways to do it. In some cases, absolutely, there are some changes that need to happen. However, they're not unattainable. They are completely obtainable. So again, to further the discussion on access control, what does it mean for an enterprise? First of all, it's knowledge. Who is on my network? 802.1x, Radius, Active Directory, or guest. For the most part, most large enterprises already have a Radius or Active Directory. They even have guest networks. How do you tie that all in? You use 802.1x, the standard by which access control is defined. Does your device simply comply with my network policies? Is this device an allowed device? Was it provided by the organization? Is this something that you gave the employee, or was it something that they brought in on their own? Many times I've seen individuals bring in a switch or a hub or maybe a laptop from home because they weren't happy with what they have, or they needed some other resource to plug into the network. And unbeknownst to the network administrator, either you get a network loop, a spanning tree loop to occur, or simply put, you introduce a box that is not pulling resources, and then he takes it home with him. And no one knows what happens after that. Anything can happen, whether intentionally or accidentally. Your antivirus, your spyware, your Windows patches, and your P2P applications. Who's watching that? Who's minding that? How can you actually tell what's going on with that box? Does it have services running on it that are not supposed to be running on your corporate environment? Are my network resources properly protected? Are you looking at it with a fine-tooth comb, or are you looking at it through rosy glasses? Those are the questions that you have to look at when your resources are discussed. Specifically, again, financial data, HR records, medical data. All of those contain sensitive information which can be used either against an individual or for the purpose of financial gain. Proper VLAN assignment. VLANs. So many things can be said about VLANs, in that it can be overly tasking, it can be cumbersome. However, if you were to place your VLANs in proper buckets for security, and you associate it to Active Directory group membership, you can easily set up your security model fairly quickly and consistently. Again, consistency is the hallmark of security, whether it be the tightest security in the world or the most unsecure network in the world. Consistency is key. Reason being is that if you're unable to secure one aspect of your environment in favor for another, then quite frankly you've done yourself a disservice, and you've done this organization a disservice. These are things that plague many organizations, because certain aspects of the environment are always considered, this is my baby, I can't have it locked down. But yet that becomes the entry point for many of the different problems, and can potentially lead to greater issues down the road. So the insider threat mitigation. Again, many of the threats that don't occur from the outside, they occur from the inside. Again, this can be from devices that are brought inside the network, and not from the ones that are sitting on outside, banging on the door outside. The firewalls are looking at the stuff outside, and they're protecting you from the outside. But what happens to that which comes from inside, including those in virtualized environments. Now, this slide, granted, is a couple years old, but it further highlights what's going on as a coordinated, as coordinated incidences are rising, and that continues today, even more so based on the proliferation of the smart devices and the usage within the enterprise. So with universal access control, you have coordinated enterprise-wide access control, authorized network, and application access only. So if you lock it down to the 802.1x and you utilize those mechanisms, you'll be able to allow authentication and access to the resources that are intended for that individual, not a one-size-fits-all application type delivery. Identity-enabled behavior, anomaly detection, and mitigation. So you're looking at the patterns, at the way the traffic is behaving, at the way the user is behaving. These are things that are being looked at with access control. Identity-based firewalling for data center. So again, you're further putting stringent controls on the data center, allowing further granularity of control using these mechanisms. Third-party device collaboration and interoperability. That's very important when looking at an access control solution set. Basically, are you able to put that into your existing environment, and will it function? Or is it going to take you a year or 2 years of development to get that thing to work and roll out? And last but not least on this one is comprehensive identity-enabled logging and reporting. Are you able to tell who's got access to what? Are you able to give a report out to your management team and say, here are the buckets, here are the individuals that have access to the secure information, and here are those that have tried to access the secure information. These are important, especially when you consider PCI HIPAA compliance and you have to generate these reports. Can you easily pull them off your firewall? That would be a very difficult task, because the firewall is tasked for looking at state, not looking for somebody looking at identity. Again, for addressing compliance, whether it be PCI, HIPAA, FISMA, COBIT, or NIST, with access control, you are stopping unauthorized network application and data access. You are checking and assessing device security posture, pre- and post-admission. So meaning that, is this box supposed to be here? Does he have what he's supposed to have? Is he running the current version of antivirus? And post-admission, what is he doing afterwards? Is he downloading something he's not supposed to be downloading? Is he opening something that he's not supposed to be opening? We shut that content down immediately because we understand him to be a threat now, and we put him in remediation. Consistent cross-network access policy enforcement. So you federate your environment so that you can access multiple platforms across multiple dispersed organizations within your enterprise. Instant data access authorization. So now you're not having to enter multiple form factor, key fobs and so forth, because you're able to access it once. And once you're in, you're in. Once you've been deemed secure, you're allowed and granted access. But again, with the eye towards what are you doing afterwards, that never goes away. Identity enables profiling, auditing, and logging. Again, understanding your behavior within the organization and the enterprise data center. Being able to identify you, being able to tell what it is that you do and log the algorithm so that we know what your behavior is of the machine. And again, FIPS client hardware and client. Being able to being able to work along the lines of government agencies and being able to have that secure aspect further enhances the security and regulation compliancy, address the compliancy issues that are set forth. So again, security guest access. Many times, many places, organizations, they have the need to bring in consultants, the need to bring in individuals, or simply put, guests do arrive, salespeople arrive, or they have temps, and they need a place to put these individuals instead of the corporate LAN. In the past, it was, can I have a line? So you grab an Ethernet cable and you plug it to the wall, and that was your access. And you're hoping that you put them on the right port inside the conference room, deemed for access only. So with universal access, what you can do now is set a range for those ports so that it can be basically analogous to whoever plugs in, and it will determine their access based on their credentials. That's important because it lessens the burden on the IT administrator as far as having to run across the hall or running across campus to provide access to, to your guest constituents, or having to prepare the room for all the guests that will be present. Simply put, once they log in through the guest environment, they're granted the necessary resources that they are allotted to, and nothing more. So LAN threat by users, in many cases, the guests do provide 58% of those threats because you don't know what's on those boxes. You didn't provision their PCs or laptops or smart devices. Employees with remote access, again, you don't know if they're using the laptop you provided them. Maybe they downloaded the VPN client somewhere and it's sitting somewhere else within their house. So how do you safeguard that packet? I was part of an organization in which that happened, where back then NIMDA 32 raised its ugly eyebrow and came down the pipe because somebody had lent their laptop to a neighbor. The neighbor had visited some malicious sites. The code was downloaded, and when this person came down through the VPN, everything was halted. Employee connected wireless to LAN. Again, do you know what's connecting? What box they're using, what platform they're using. Contractors and outsourced labor, and unmanageable devices such as printers, VoIP card readers, and cameras. Now, while those may not necessarily be a security issue, they are certainly a provisioning issue as far as how do you safeguard or keep somebody from spoofing these devices, in particular VoIP phones. VoIP phones, for the most part, have another port on the back, and if that port is not turned off, can easily be used to access the network. Now, if you enable the service with a supplicant, being that you're able to handle more than one request on the same port, you're able to mitigate that by using 802.1x as a governance factor. Again, that port will be treated just as a guest port, and if it is a device that is not provisioned for the network, it will be treated as such and then placed into the guest environment. If the device is something that is not provisioned properly or has some malicious code on it, it will be placed into remediation until the device can either be cleaned up or is taken offline. Again, universal access limits guest access to whatever it is, whatever the parameters are that you set forth. The base level and depth of access on guest type, identity, and role. Those are critical as they are defined within your organization as you push them out to your constituents. Device health and security assessment pre- and post-admission. One-time guest accounts, time-based guest accounts, VLAN or overlay guest use and enforcement, and they are administratively controlled. Okay. So what does this all mean? So we have all these fantastic technologies, we have all these fantastic devices that you can put on your network solutions and so, but what does it all mean without a policy? Well, without a policy specifically, it means absolutely nothing. The main purpose of the security policy is to inform users, staff, and managers of their obligatory requirements for protecting technology and its information assets. Now, if you look at that, what it really is telling you is that you have a mandate in order to protect your network. And it's not just the mandate for that of the IT administrator or the security administrator. It should be a mandate for all individuals inside the organization, be it down to the guy in the mailroom all the way up to the CIO. Basically put, or simply put, if you allow your network to be compromised, you're allowing your network to fail, and if you allow your network to fail, that's going to come at a great cost to your organization. And these are the things that, again, the adage reigns true. It takes a village. It really does take a village to make sure that you are secure in your environment. So as far as creating security policy, it must be clearly defined in, as far as services that are offered versus security provided. That needs to be understood. Ease of use versus security. Many people view security as a constraint and not as an avenue to profitability. And the cost of security versus the risk of loss. Can you really afford to do nothing, or can you really afford to remain stagnant with the architecture that you currently have? So in order for security policy to be appropriate and effective, it needs to have the acceptance and support of all levels of employees. Again, it takes a village. But furthermore, it needs to be driven down from the top down. Again, this is the whole adage, security without teeth. Without teeth, it means that you have a policy in place, but it's just a blasé policy, one that can just remain ambiguous and inattenuous, and no one will really pay attention to it because it's not being enforced by anybody in the organization. So policy creation, security policies, what they should be, implementable through system administration procedures, publishing of acceptable usage guidelines, or other appropriate methods. Enforceable with security tools where appropriate, and with sanctions. In other words, somebody actually has to do something. There have to be consequences where actual prevention is not technically feasible. Clearly defined with the areas of responsibility for the users, administrators, and management. So everybody needs to know their role. Everyone needs to have that sense of guidance as to what occurs in the event of an outbreak or the event of a break-in. And again, conversely, all things of what security policy should not be are all things to all people. Again, the one-size-fits-all glove cannot and will not provide a robust, secure environment. Specifically, it just further complicate issues because as you apply this general or default policy, you're specifically going to further hamper your efforts down the road, because as you try to implement further security, it's going to be difficult, because once you get used to going in one direction, it's going to be hard to reverse. I've seen this in many cases where organizations have begun and said, you know what, we're going to start with this default template, and we're just going to stop here for the time being. We're going to test it. We're going to see how it works. But then you get down to a point where you have so many users on the network, and everybody's gotten so used to the way things are working. The moment you try to change things, your support calls are going to go up. Everybody is up in arms. There are many people that are upset. Now you're being told, tear it down. Another thing you can't be in security is inflexible. There has to be dialogue. There needs to be discussions as to who needs access to what. Those areas of which require specific security need to be addressed, and those that require lesser security need to be addressed. And all the information needs to be laid out on the table so that it's clearly understood. These are the caveats by putting these things in here. I'm not going to be draconian and apply 100% security policy where, you know, barely a trickle of water gets through, but also I'm not going to open up the pipe so that everyone and their grandmother can get through. These are things that cannot be done and should not be done, because again, these kinds of policies, again, will frustrate the user and bind the security of the admin and help us with complaints and trouble tickets. And even more importantly, security policy cannot be vague or ambiguous. These kind of policies really do create more of a firestorm than they do of a solution. Reason being is because, again, this is the policy with no teeth. It's not enforceable. It will only create the deep quagmire that will be hard to recover from. It's difficult because now you've set forth in motion policies and procedures that are out there, but no one's doing anything about them. They're just specifically there to take up space on a piece of paper. Simply put, they are the hot dog at the 7-Eleven. It's merely a display item. At that point, you cannot afford to go ahead and release this type of policy and expect your constituents after a while to not pick up on the fact, hey, they're not really doing anything about anything. So I guess I can do this. I guess I can do that. Or, hey, well, what's the process for this? We got hacked. What do we do? Well, we don't write it up. You know, we just let it go. Those are the types of issues and concerns that can really complicate an organization when it relates to security. And all of your capital And all of your time spent of your well-meaning acquisitions for all of these technologies that you have just purchased will be flushed down the tube. The ROI by which you stand to gain from virtualization or cloud computing has just gone down the tube. The reason being is that now you have security concerns and issues that you can't recover from, so now you have to reverse engineer everything. These are the things and questions that proliferate throughout many organizations in today's day and age. I beg you and ask you the question, can you really afford to do nothing? Can you really afford to stand by and not review your security policy? Is your security policy something that was written 10 years ago and needs to be revisited because of everything that's been put in today? I ask you the question, and I ask you to please go forth and think about it and ask yourselves within your organizations, how are we securing today? So how do you avoid all of this in the first place? Well, first of all, you need to get the appropriate individuals in the room. So you have to ask the pertinent questions of the pertinent people. And you have to have organizational buy-in. Again, it's not just the top only driving down or the bottom clamoring for information and saying, help, we need this. It needs to be discussed amongst many of the different organizations within the enterprise. Reason being is without buy-in with all of the key stakeholders, it becomes difficult to pass and adopt. So if the sales force is really adamant against certain type of security, maybe it is because they don't understand it. Maybe they've heard something. Maybe some other organization. Maybe they come from an organization in which it was too tight or too liberal. These are questions. Again, they beg to be asked. Can you afford not to discuss this with your peers? Today, in today's economy, in today's society, we are moving at an ever alarming rate as far as technology adoption, platform adoption, and socialization. We cannot afford to sit by and watch and allow and just say what we have in place is good. What we have in place is adequate. You have to review your environment to make sure that you are properly preparing for down the road. It may not necessarily happen this year, may not necessarily happen the following year, but at least get a plan in place to help you mitigate all of these issues. So who do you talk to? So if you have a site security administrator or security officer, certainly that is probably the best place to start. And then you bring in the information technology and technical staff. One of the things that I often ask my customers are, does everybody truly know what's in the environment? I can line up the group that's listed in here in most organizations and ask them, tell me, how many servers do you have, or do you know what you have for your security platform or your services in general? And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get a different response from everybody in the room. It's not because they don't know, it's because they understand what they have in front of them. So that's why it's important to understand and have that level of collaboration in order to make sure that you do safeguard and also build a logical and coherent network that will actually function for the years to come. It's important to get buy-in from everybody. Communication is key. So again, you talk to your administrators of the large user groups. So maybe you have a technical supervisor. You have one of those individuals that is a technical lead for that particular group. It might be from the SAP group. It might be from the Lotus Notes or Outlook or certain types of users. Maybe it's the call center. They might have a technical lead. These are individuals that can help drive the message down. A security response team. Again, you got to have collaboration. What do we do if something breaks? What do we do if we can't? If we get broken into and our information is taken? How do you mitigate that? How do you stop? How do you stop the bleeding? And furthermore, how do you contain it? Representatives of the user groups affected by the security policy. Again, so basically your user constituents. You got to have some. You have to have some feedback. They have to understand equally as much as anybody else why these processes and procedures are being put in place. To simply be draconian and just say, hey, I'm going to do this, and then not give them any explanation, well, you're just going to give them an avenue to circumvent you and do other things. And then again, responsible management and legal counsel if appropriate. If there are certain items or content that is legally bound or requires the presence of an attorney because of the sensitivity of the content, then please do so and include them. But again, responsible management. Just like a good parent is, you have to give consequences. You have to show that there will be consequences for your actions or misactions. You cannot just allow the day-to-day doldrums to take hold when there are security problems afoot and then not do anything about it. These types of actions will only further exacerbate the issues inside, and again will further frustrate your user constituency and have them go out and about and circumvent your policies. So that pretty much sums up the technical discussion that I had for you today. What I wanted, like I talked to you earlier about, as far as the introductions, about the J Solutions Group. J Solutions Group is made up of several individuals, and we have been around for a few years now, and we are a child company of the Marin Technical Group. Marin has been around since the early 1900s, and they acquired Structured Technologies a while back, which is our parent company. And we spun off J Solutions because we figured we needed a way to provide visibility into our Juniper offering and so forth. But not only that, we are agnostic to our hardware as well. We provide data center to the cloud services as well as network assessments, technical design, low latency, energy audits, data center relocation, staging and configuration, and managed services. We have partnered with many good organizations throughout the years, but specifically to Juniper Networks, which provides us a great deal of support. We also have our competency with our J Solutions team. Again, my name is David Antles. I am the director of engineering, but we also have Jim Kennedy, who is our most senior engineer, and Sam Khan, who is our LAN engineer, and Nomer Altienza, who is our junior engineer. We have a wide breadth of technology and expertise in many different facets as it relates to security and network architecture, but we also have wide breadth of technology expertise as it relates to other vendors' platforms. We are also certified in many of the other top dogs, if you will, out there. Bill Walwyn is our sales director. Feel free to contact him if you have any questions regarding the solutions that we have, including Janelle Evans, who is also our account executive. She will be most helpful to you if you'd like to contact her as well. And putting on the presentation for us and this wonderful slide deck that was presented was Diana Arendt. Does a fantastic job of being our marketing manager. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at any of these emails. I'd be more than happy to get back to you. Or if you want, you could set up a discussion with us face-to-face, have lunch or whatnot. We'd be more than happy to come in and talk to you about your environment. Or if you just want to talk technology, that's also fine as well. We are always happy to talk to anyone and everyone about it. I especially get excited when I talk technology in general and be able to share, ideas and bounce ideas off of others. So with that, if anybody has any questions, please pose them to Diana. If not, feel free to send us an email, and I thank you for your time.